It's official, petrol and diesel cars will be banned from sale in Europe in 2035, with low volume manufacturers like Porsche and Lamborghini given an extra year to follow suit. When you compare that news to the title of a video that I made back in February 2021, which was "Have Porsche just saved petrol heads?", you'd think that means the answer to my question was sadly no. However, in this video I'm going to be quickly recapping what Porsche have been doing with synthetic fuels, otherwise known as e-fuels, talk about the progress that's been made since last year, not only by Porsche but around the industry, and mention why it may not be the absolute end for petrol and diesel cars. A quick reminder, if you like this content and want to see more like it, and you like combustion engine cars, smash the like button and subscribe as well if you're new here. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So let's quickly catch up with this nonsense. Porsche and Siemens Energy announced a partnership where they would be building a world-leading synthetic fuels plant in Chile, in an area that has the perfect conditions for making the fuel. The process is entirely carbon neutral, in that it takes carbon and turns it into fuel, and the amount of carbon taken from the environment is the same as that put back into it by burning it in a combustion engine. That's an oversimplification, but if you want to hear more, go and check out the video I made last year. Link will be in the pinned comments and in the description. The idea behind this is that it would handle the problem of having to convert a bunch of cars to renewable energy sources, or scrap a bunch of cars and replace them with electric or hydrogen cars, or the equivalent. It would effectively mean that all existing combustion engine cars running on the fuel would have become immediately carbon neutral, which is pretty cool. So if you could get all cars running on it, all cars would be carbon neutral, without having to then expend millions of tons of CO2 every year building enough electric cars to make up for the loss in combustion ones. The main problem is that the process is very difficult and currently very expensive, so the tech needs to get cheaper so the petrol that comes out of the pump is the right price for both the supplier and consumer. Again, that was super brief, so if you want to know more info, check out my older video. So what progress has been made on this? Well, first of all, it's worth noting that it's not just Porsche playing in this space, but we'll get to that properly in a minute. Porsche have made some good progress, as they have begun construction of their factory in Chile as of about September 2021, with the intention of getting their first few trials of e-fuel into real cars this year. Their original idea was that in 2022 the e-fuel would replace the already pretty decent race biofuel that's made up of multiple food waste products used in the Porsche Mobile 1 Super Cup. There were a bunch of articles about it when it first got announced, but honestly it's hard to actually see whether that was done for this season, given it's not in the technical regulations from what I can see, and there wasn't a massive shout about it, so I can neither confirm nor deny whether the e-fuel was actually used this year. Either way, in April this year, Porsche reconfirmed their commitment to industrial scale production of e-fuels by investing $75 million in HIF Global LFC, who are actively managing developments of e-fuel production facilities across the globe in Chile, the US, and Australia most notably. They've also been seen using their renewable fuels in many events, like the GT4 RS that ran at the GP Ice race, but again, that isn't this e-fuel. They're taking their time with this stuff basically, but again, that makes sense given the massive cost and the current regulatory environment surrounding combustion engined cars. I mentioned other companies are also on e-fuel development right now, with the biggest being Toyota, who believe e-fuels may be industry-wide in the not too distant future with the right investment. Others include Subaru, Suzuki and Daihatsu, as well as the Ineos brand being particularly involved in development as well. You might have also seen e-fuels out on track in Formula 1 already, with Sebastian Vettel using carbon neutral synthetic fuel in his Red 5 Mansell car at the British Grand Prix, and F1 has announced that it's developed synthetic fuels that all teams will have to use from 2026 onwards, which won't make a difference to the cars themselves, but will make a marked difference in helping F1 achieve its net zero carbon goals for 2030. So what does that actually mean for combustion engines moving forwards? Well, I hate to say it, but I'm still not fully convinced. Regulations around the world need to match the intentions of these manufacturers soon, otherwise there will be limited benefit to investing heavily in this space, so it will just get shelved with other forms of mobility taking preference. And though the EU's new regulations are a bit vague, as cars have to be carbon neutral, which would indicate that petrol and diesel cars running on e-fuels would be acceptable, but at the same time, petrol and diesel cars are banned from sale from 2035, it's a bit of a mess. It's hard to commit to investing in building cars that will likely be out of date in 13 years time, so it would have to be a clear regulatory change around e-fuels specifically. But with that in mind, analysts have suggested that sadly at the current rate of growth, e-fuels will only be able to power 2% of the cars currently on the roads in Europe, which is clearly clearly nowhere near enough to make combustion engine cars worth investing in for manufacturers versus other types. Again, this is why if cars are to remain with combustion engines, governments need to decide that e-fuels are the way they want to go and make policy that backs them. This doesn't currently look very likely, but it's important to note, however you look at this, it's still 13 years away. I'll be 40 years old then, and it will likely be a very different world by that point. I would suggest that over the next 5 to 7 years, the way that regulation goes will be the way that manufacturers will go too, and if it doesn't go e-fuels way, at least we can rest easy enough knowing that race cars will still in many cases sound amazing screaming through our favourite tracks running on carbon neutral fuel. So what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. Are e-fuels a worthwhile investment? Hit like as well if you haven't already, and subscribe as well if you're new here. Thank you very much in advance. Oh, and a huge thanks to the patrons for their support as always. But now that you're up to date with e-fuels, I think you need to get up to date on how used car prices are starting to dip massively and how you can take advantage of it. So click here for that, and click this button to stay up to date on my 2 videos every single week.